Omar goes on to explaining that while United Nations Resolution 1325, written in 2000, admitted that women bear the brunt of war, the use of sexualized violence has been especially exploited as the way to target family and the whole entire communities. How can this situation be addressed? Omar also says that the key to convince the international community that the use of sexual violence against women as a tool of war must be identified as a terrorist attack. These are attacks that are used to cause terror, she says, and also to cause submission of communities. Beheading and bombing are seen as terrorist attack or acts, but the systematic rape, abduction, and trafficking of women as a war tactic is still viewed only as a women's or humanitarian issue, unfortunately. Until we recognize these acts of sexual violence as acts of terrorism and not simply as a humanitarian concern, it will be difficult to combat these ongoing catastrophic attacks against women. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you again for giving me the privilege to share with you this forum this evening. My first speaker is a generalist settlement caseworker at MacArthur University Services Initiative. She has worked in the industry for over 15 years, including 2 years with aged care sector. She has a BA, Bachelor of Arts in English Literature from Baghdad University, diploma in IT, community welfare, and a diploma in management. She has lived, worked, and studied in many countries, including her home country, Iraq, England, United States, Emirates, Arab, and Spain. She worked with different cultures and people across a range of skills and jobs. She has experienced both overseas and Australian, and she's driven by a passion to support this disadvantaged culturally and linguistically diverse community, especially women going through financial hardship, finding suitable accommodation, domestic violence issue, settlement issue, language, family, health, accommodation, torture and trauma, and mental health. Please welcome Sana Al-Ahmar.
Before I start my presentation, I would like to ask this. How many of you have been affected by what is happening in Iraq today? How many of us feel that our hands are tied? Sometimes we feel useless because it seems like we cannot do anything to help our country and our people. I think we all do, even those who are not Iraqis, because what's happening in Iraq at the moment is affecting the whole world. We all want to help by advocating, supporting, donating, and doing everything that we can. We are all passionate in our pursuit of justice, which sometimes feel like it is standing still. What we are doing today is a small step in advocating for our Iraqi women who are the victims of terror and violence. My presentation is all forms and extent of violence against Iraqi women. Women's bodies often become one of the terrains of war. Physical, emotional, and sexual violence perpetrated against women and girls has been used to impose political agendas, humiliate opponents, and destroy entire communities. Violence against women is an integral part of that. That's from the Minority Rights Group International. The situation in Iraq, that Iraq faces, women in Iraq face, is a stark example of that. Iraqi women before and today. Iraq is a signatory to the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination and Violence Against Women. In the 80s, women made up to 46% of teachers, 29% of doctors, 46% of dentists, and 70% of pharmacists. We also have the engineers, and we have the mental health workers, and we have so many professionals in Iraq. Today, female professionals throughout Iraq have been targeted for taking active roles as lawyers, doctors, journalists, politicians, and activists. Post-invasion and now with ISIS, it has become dangerous for women to take roles outside the home. 28 female journalists were assassinated between the year 2003 and the year 2013. Many more were assaulted, threatened, abused, and displaced. ISIS have killed female parliamentarian candidates, lawyers, including human rights lawyer Samira Ali, who was publicly executed after being tortured. Women are killed being labeled as prostitutes or for transgressing the moral code of ISIS and the militias. This is a picture of university students in the, maybe it's in the 70s. And this is the picture of women today in refugee camps. What female victims of Iraqi conflict face: population displacement. They are internally displaced, so there are millions of them. Life at refugee camps, kidnapping, abduction as the spoils of war, rape and sexual assault, human trafficking, honor crimes and domestic violence and child protection. Approximately there are 1.6 million widows who are heads of their families. Violation by ISIS, sexual slavery, forced conversion, and FGM, which is female genital mutilation. Internally displaced Iraqis. The Iraqi population today is, I think, approximately 36 millions. 3.276 millions are internally displaced, including 2.176 millions who were displaced between December 2013 and January 2015. And that's the time when ISIS did its worst work in Iraq. Estimated, as I said before, estimated 1.6 million Iraqi widows and over 3 million orphans. Other reports say that there are over 5 million orphans actually in Iraq. As we know, the numbers are not always correct, but the approximation is about 3 million. Approximately 4,000 women were abducted by ISIS. Few hundred of them escaped. ISIS used abduction on a massive scale throughout 2014 as a method of control and spreading fear. They slaughtered men and abducted Shabak, Turkoman, and Yazidi women in particular. The Sinjar Crisis Management Team has compiled a list containing approximately 4,300. Other reports says it's around 7,000. Yazidi hostages held by ISIS, 7,000 Yazidi hostages held by ISIS. More than half are women who were forcibly taken to Syria and were forcibly married to ISIS fighters or sold as sexual slaves. Many more Christian women from Mosul and Shia women, mainly Turkoman, were abducted as well. Iraqis believe, as they do in a lot of all parts of the Middle East, is that chastity and family honor prevents many sexual assault victims from reporting. The fear, there's always the thing that this is our family, and we have to hold the name of our family up there, so we cannot go and admit that we were sexually assaulted. They won't even admit it to their own families. Women face continuing stigma long after their ordeals, which prevents them from returning to a normal life. Militia from all sides of the conflict had been known to use sexual violence as a method of control and of humiliating opponents. ISIS has also introduced and legitimized the practice of sexual slavery. As I spoke before, there's forced marriages, and women were sold as sex slaves, regardless whether they have reached puberty. Women escaping ISIS captivity have found their way to Kurdistan and were placed in camps and other temporary living arrangements. Many have family members killed. Others were raped and tortured. Many need emergency medical treatment, which they rarely got. And others are afraid to return back to their own families due to cultural issues. But the Yazidi community spiritual leader, called on their community to welcome these women back, which is really a great outcome. Women at refugee camps are harassed and sexually exploited. Refugee camps are one of the worst places for single women. And many of the widows and women who had fled ISIS are single, and these women need protection. Human Rights Watch reported that ISIS fighters conducted group weddings between kidnapped Yazidi women and ISIS and the fighters. Waves of displacement to Kurdistan include Shia, Sunni, and Christian families. The pressure on Iraqi Christians has been strongest due to the brutality of ISIS towards them. This is the tragedy of women in Iraq. Strategies. I'm sure my colleagues have many other strategies they're going to talk about. And I think we should look at them and maybe at least choose some of them to help our women. Working with the UN and other humanitarian organizations to help and support Iraqi women. Promoting women's rights, including the prevention of sexual violence. And promoting an inclusive political environment, which includes a respect for religious and ethnic minorities. Advocacy efforts on women's access to rights, promotion of freedom of expression in the media, and strengthening the rule of the law in civil society. More employment opportunities for women. Wide level of displacement and the absence of employment opportunities have also left women increasingly vulnerable to trafficking. There should be also a legislation change regarding rape. In Iraq, if a woman was raped, then the man who raped her, if he decides to marry her, then that's it, it's forgotten. And this shouldn't happen. Recently, Iraqi women organizations have incorporated the practice of mediation in their efforts to assist victims of gender-based violence. Especially in northern Iraq, women's advocates have incorporated the practice and applied it to a greater variety of cases. It is important that those social workers are trained because many of them might have no idea. They were just put there on the spot and they have to work with the women that need help. راح شوية أحكي the summary. I'm going to say the summary in Arabic. العراق يعد طرفاً في العديد من الاتفاقيات ومواثيق ومعاهدات حقوق الإنسان الدولية، بما فيها اتفاقية القضاء على كل أشكال التمييز والعنف ضد المرأة. يتم استعمال العنف الجسدي والجنسي والمعنوي ضد النساء في المواجهات العسكرية لإذلال الخصم ولتدمير مجتمعات بأكملها، والوضع الذي تواجهه النساء في العراق أكبر مثال على ذلك. تتعرض النساء للتهديد من قبل جميع أطراف الصراع الدائري من الجماعات الإجرامية التي تهددهن بالقتل والاغتصاب. وحتى قوات الأمن تخفق أحيانا في حمايتهم، بل هم يتواطؤون في العنف المرتكب بحقهم. حسب منظمة الهجرة العالمية تم تهجير كما قلت سابقا، تم تهجير 2.1 مليون عراقي في سنة 2014، وعدد المهجرين داخل العراق اليوم يبلغ حوالي 3,276,000. النساء المهجرات هن أكثر عرضة للمخاطر بسبب جنسهن. يتم استهداف النساء المهنيات في شتى أنحاء العراق بسبب مشاركتهن للمجال العام، سواء من خلال العمل كمحاميات أو صحفيات أو طبيبات أو سياسيات. فقد أصبح من الخطر ممارسة السيدات لأدوارهم خارج نطاق المنزل. وقامت داعش بعمليات خطف على نطاق واسع في سنة 2014، وكذلك وسيلة لإحكام سيطرتها على الأهالي ونشر الرعب ولتأمين زوجات لمقاتليها. خطفت داعش نساء من قرى الشبك والتركمان وحوالي 4,000 امرأة يزيدية، واجبرنا على الزواج من مقاتلي داعش وتعرضنا للاغتصاب والتعذيب أو تم بيعنا في سوق الرقيق. هذه هي مأساة المرأة العراقية. ما هي الأشياء اللي إحنا نقدر نسويها؟ إن شاء الله اليوم with what we're doing today, maybe it's our first step for a further work with the team. And there is the resources. Thank you very much.
My next speaker has on his portfolio. It includes 17 research papers published. He's the author of 40 books published, 3 invitations in Sudan, Morocco, and United Arab Emirates. His teaching posts include 7 universities in Iraq, Morocco, Jordan, United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia. Middle Eastern conferences, where he has attended to 13 major conferences in the Middle East. For his academic qualification, University of Baghdad, Iraq, Baccalaureate in Sociology, Master of Arts in Sociology from Eastern Michigan University, USA, PhD in Sociology, Wayne University, State University, Michigan. Also on his employment experience, he's a professor, University of Baghdad, Iraq, University of Mohammed bin Abdullah, Yarmouk University, Jordan, United Arab Emirates University, Nif Arab University for Security Sciences, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Please welcome Professor Dr. Ma'an Al-Omar.
Thank you, Dr. Hijab. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My participation will focus on psychosocial background of violence. And I have to define violence from psychological and social point of view as a behavior product of social interaction between two persons. This kind of behavior is learned, not inherited. The person learned from his parents or peer group or TV or movie. And this kind of behavior is emotional, not rational. It's irrational behavior. Besides that, the violence, created violence, it's like snowball, never stop. Whenever society change and progress, the violence will be more and more and different kind of violence. First of all, I am going to define the violence from sociological point of view as an action that is meant to make others feel hurt, scared, small, or humiliated. Violence happens in our house, in school, in peer group, in the community also. But maybe somebody will ask why people are violent. The answer is people get violent when they lose their tempers. They sometimes shout or hit at the persons they angry with, or when they are under pressure, or when they are unhappy because they are stressed, when they feel out of control, when they feel have power, when they learn from TV and parents, when they are under drugs. All these factors and reasons make person violent in order to prove his self-affiliation and self-assertion. Now, I am going to define the types of violence. Violence is not one type. As I said, when society change, the process of violence change also and become different kinds from each period of time. Violence can be physical, using physical force, pushing, retreating, punching, biting, kicking, burning. Another type of violence is emotional, verbal, put down, giving looks that make you scared, name calling, telling crazy, or useless, idiot, foolish. The third type of violence is sexual forcing, manipulating, doing sexual acts to someone not wanted. Another type of violence is financially, using money as a source of power over someone, making someone dependent on you for money, forcing someone to beg for money. And another type of violence is social, that use social life to control someone, feel bad about himself, not letting someone choose his own friends. And spiritual violence, that use the religious faith or religious beliefs as a form of control or to hurt someone. So these are types and kinds of violence. There is no one type of violence. But some people believe they are right when they are using a violent behavior. This belief is incorrectly. Many people who act to a violent may believe incorrectly that violence is acceptable and a good way to get what you want. And violence is okay because people deserve it. They need to show they are more powerful than someone else, and they are superior to someone else because of characteristics they have. Then violence is something that can not be controlled. Feminine is to be weak, powerless, and need to be controlled. Anger always results in violence. These are beliefs. Most of people believe in that, especially in Oriental societies. Another subject or topic, violence against women. There are too many types and kinds of violence against women, not only one type of violence. Domestic violence, sexual violence, sexual assault, rape, marital rape, gang rapes, date rape, sexual harassment, child abuse, child sexual abuse, incest, homophobia, violence, elder abuse, genital mutilation, enforced abortion, enforced prostitution, killing of unwanted female babies, enforced motherhood, and female circumcisions. These are actions against women in different societies. There are several theories in psychology and sociology interpreted why a person behave like an animal in his behavior to be violent. I choose three theories interpreted the violence among people. First one is learned violence theory. Men better because they have learned violence in their families as children, and women seek oppressive man because they saw their mothers being abused. The second theory is lose of control theory. Men are abusive when they drink alcohol because the alcohol causes them lose of control, or when they cannot release their feeling, they use violence. The third theory is social rewarding theory. Depends on reducing frustration, enhance self-esteem, providing material goods, and earning the price of other people. There is one sociologist, she is an American sociologist, wrote a book named Understanding Arabs. published 2012. This one. Her name is Margaret Nigel. She explained and answered why Iraqi women against violence. She said, Margaret said, in the mid-20th century, Iraqi women were among the most liberated in the Middle East. Iraqi women were throughout or fully integrated into workplace, many as professionals. Within a span of 20 years, thousands of women becomes lawyers, physicians, professors, engineers, scientists, and writers. In 1959, Iraq became the first country in the Middle East who have female minister and 4 female judges. Also in 1959, Code of Personal Status gave women equal political and economic rights and extensive legal protection. But unfortunately, the impressive progress toward rights was completely wiped out by the 2 Gulf Wars. Under the sanctions, women were pushed out of the labor force to ensure employment for men. Co-education, secondary school, were changed to single sex only. In 2005, a new constitution was voted in with the return to Sharia view law in the most conservative interpretation. She clearly lost ground, forced marriage and one-sided divorce. Most of them spend their time at home fearing attack or kidnapping. Iraqi culture supported violence through patriarchy and value system. Thank you so much.
My third speaker for this evening, she's a project manager specialized in information technology. Being a woman that has worked in large corporate organizations in different countries with different culture across diverse teams, Ilham has seen and has experienced the consequences of imbalance in gender economics in the workplace. Her beliefs in women's rights and gender equality led her to be a member of the following organization: Organizing Committee of the Gender Economy Conference in 2014, Global Women in Information Technology Organization. Her quote is, her favorite one, "Women and only women can speak for themselves," and I totally agree. Please welcome Ilham Dawood. And I think you speak for 8 minutes.
Thank you for coming and listening to my speech. And the other thing I didn't add to my bio, which I'm very proud of, is I received the American Express Chairman Award in 2010 for quality. It's given yearly award for only 50 employees out of 70,000 employees. But I make it short to make you believe I am young. My subject is women against violence and terrorism, and women's role in countering violence, extremism, and radicalization. But first, I would like to touch base on the two things. Very briefly, I'll touch base on them. Women are the main victims of the conflict. And why are smart young women flee home to join terror groups? Women are main victims of the area of conflict. Women's lives and their bodies have been the unacknowledged casualties of war for too long. And you heard from Shadia and I think Yasmina, and still they treat it as individual case by case. There is still United Nations not think that raping women is a crime of war. Iraqi women are being raped, degraded, enslaved, young and old alike. And you heard many examples from my colleague Sana. Why? Why? Question. Anyone? Any answer? Do you think why? Are all these acts are just byproduct of war, as a result of war? Abuse of women is a deliberate military strategy. Yes, it is a military strategy. Women are used deliberately as military strategy. I repeat and reiterate this, whether by state-backed troops or irregular militia. Motives: punish, humiliate, and control minority ethnic groups. Convert to Islam by force, a strategy of ethnic cleansing. I put underline under this, is ethnic cleansing through breeding Muslim children. Weaken the integrity of the minority community by impregnating women. I'll stop here. There are many other motives, but these are mostly neglected by the media. They don't touch on this. So this is my touch point on why women are victims of war. The second point, which I touched briefly, is why smart young women flee home to join terror groups. As you can see from the picture, those girls caught at Heathrow Airport trying to flee and travel to Jordan to join ISIS. As you can see, that none of them is wearing hijab. See, so, and they are smart. One of them is year 1 medical school, studying medicine. Selling the fantasy escape. ISIS have been selling a fantasy to young people, including young women. False hope of fantasy, an exciting life and empowerment. They promise them of an exciting life and empowerment. Sense of purpose, that's why they leave. Sense of purpose through jihad and being part of a new Islamic state. They think that they will be part of a new ideal, as they think, an Islamic state. So why do young Muslim women, I here reiterate, I said Muslim, but that doesn't prevent, because there is a girl from United States is joined, but the majority who joining them are Muslim girls. That's why I use the word Muslim. Muslim women, why Muslim women seek this sense of purpose far abroad. They travel and they go. The main reason, there are many reasons, but the main one, which everyone, all the media, all the writers, all conferences agreed, is marginalization of Muslim women in the West. A sense of marginalization, social alienation, and isolation arising from lack of sense of belonging. Discrimination based on gender, religion, and race. Reduced employment opportunities. A human rights violation, including those that rise from counter-terrorism measures. This is a very important period. Sometimes when the officials try to implement the measures of terrorism, they abuse or they discriminate women. Terrorist groups will continue recruiting marginalized individuals. Any individual, not only women, but often women, with the false promise of better life. Now, what is the role of women, and not only women, and all of us, organizations and government, we can do to safeguarding our communities from violent extremism and radicalization? First of all, and this is also based on the Security Council law, I think 1325, is affirming and protection of human rights. This is a key point a key for counter-terrorism measures. Promoting gender equality and women's rights in the context of countering terrorism. Yes, women, they participate, in all policies against countering terrorism. Increasing awareness of women terrorist radicalization. Many people, they still deny that. They still deny that young girls, young women can participate. So this is a point that we should increase awareness. Educate and sensitize the community. Dispel stereotypes and misconceptions. This includes parents, teachers, social workers, frontline police officers, judges, and journalists. Reinforce their valuable role as a parent and educator. Role as a parent in Muslim family. The risk of terrorist radicalization must be addressed within the family as well as society. This is very important. We can't blame everything on the media, on the social media, or on the governments, or on the other things. So it should be addressed within the families. Parents need to be able to answer their children questions about their religious, cultural, and political identity. This is an essential ability. Inability to openly discuss and address critical questions could leave a vacuum that risks being filled with violent extremist narratives. So there will be a void, and terrorist group will capture this and will fill it with their narratives. Government need to support civil society initiative for Muslim women. This is very important to help them to answer questions. And as my colleague Sana mentioned, they educate women. So educate women on their cultural, religious, and political history in order to enable them to formulate and discuss different informative messages, challenging extremist narratives. So they can challenge the people who they tell them stories about the life with ISIS, for example. They can challenge the religious leaders. This is very important. Education is not schooling only. Education is to talk about their cultural, political, and religious identity as well. Actively consult Muslim women in counter-terrorist initiatives. Leverage parent and community leaders to keep youth safe online. This is important. You hear again and again about social media and ISIS. It's like brainwash the young people on the social media. I say internet because it's include Twitter, Facebook, and different media. Monitoring the internet sites by law enforcement agencies only and temporary measures. So even if parents or governments, they can implement any programs, and I have seen it. I work in information technology, and you can install programs to trace where your kids going, what they are seeing. But believe me, there is always a way they can go around it. So that's what we should do as a parents. Parents, teachers, and community leaders are best positioned to provide guidance to keep young people safe in the real world, and it should be no difference when they venture online. So if you talk to them, be open to them, educate them about their background, religious background, identity, that will make them safe whether on the internet or at school or in the mosque. So talking and keep the channels open with them. Involve and engage women in all stages of counter-terrorism and counter-radicalization strategies. Here were my quote as well, women can speak for themselves, only women. So even the Security Council in their Law 1329, they reiterated this, that women should play a role and be involved in all stages through the implementation of strategies, policies, and measures for counter-terrorism. Leverage women activists and community leaders. Identify key women activists and community leaders and organizations in order to diversify partnership across society. And this is very important to identify the organization that can help the parents, the teachers, in the counter-terrorism. And my colleague Layla, she will identify some of those organizations and their capabilities and what they can offer. So that's the English part of my subject. I will summarize it in Arabic for the people, for the Arabic speakers. دور النساء في مكافحة التطرف العنف والراديكالية اللذين يؤديان إلى الإرهاب وتمكينهن من ذلك. لأن التطرف دائما يؤدي إلى الإرهاب. بس أنا هنا أحكي عن التطرف الذي يؤدي إلى الإرهاب. هناك عوامل محددة قد تؤدي إلى التطرف بين النساء، وقد تشمل التمييز القائم على نوع الجنس، وانخفاض فرص العمل، وعدم القدرة على ممارسة الحقوق المدنية، انتهاكات حقوق الإنسان بما في ذلك التي تنبع نتيجة تدابير مكافحة الإرهاب. كلها يمكن أن تعزز إحساس المرأة بالتهميش والاغتراب والعزلة الاجتماعية الذي بدوره يؤدي إلى تطرفهن. إن الجماعات الإرهابية ستستمر في تجنيد الأفراد المهمشين الذين هم غالبا من النساء مع وعد بحياة أفضل. للتمكن من مساعدة النساء في محاربة الإرهاب يجب العمل على نشر ثقافة حقوق الإنسان والمواطنة، وتعزيز المساواة بين الجنسين، والامتناع عن تجاهل المساواة وحقوق المرأة عمدا أو عن غير قصد في سياق مكافحة الإرهاب. يجب معالجة خطر الراديكالية الإرهابية ضمن الأسرة والمجتمع، ولهذا السبب يجب أن يكون الآباء قادرين على الإجابة على أسئلة أبنائهم حول هويتهم الدينية والسياسية والثقافية، وهذه القدرة بالغة الأهمية. إن عدم القدرة على مناقشة القضايا الهامة ومعالجتها بشكل صريح يحدث فراغاً يمكن أن يتم ملئه بسيناريوهات متطرفة وعنيفة. دعم مبادرات المجتمع المدني لتثقيف النساء حول تاريخهن الثقافي والديني والسياسي بهدف تمكينهن من صياغة الرسائل المعيارية المختلفة ومناقشتها ومواجهة السيناريوهات المتطرفة. التنبه إلى أن الجماعات الإرهابية تجند الشباب من خلال الإنترنت. إن برامج مراقبة مواقع الإنترنت التي قد تستخدمها بعض المؤسسات أو الأهل هو تدبير مؤقت. يجب على الأهل والمعلمين وقادة المجتمع تقديم التوجيه والإرشاد لحماية الأبناء من التطرف، لأن التطرف قد لا يأتي من الإنترنت فقط. إشراك النساء بشكل فعال في جميع مراحل وضع وتنفيذ وتقييم استراتيجيات وسياسات وتدابير مكافحة الإرهاب والراديكالية. تحديد النساء الناشطات والمنظمات الرئيسية مع قدراتها واحتياجاتها بهدف تنويع الشراكات وبالتالي إشراك المجموعات المتنوعة وتوعيتها. وهذا الموضوع راح تتكلم عنه زميلتي ليلى ناجي. شكرا لك. شكرا.
One of our youth presenter, contribution by one of the members of Youth Against Violence and Extremism. Please welcome Ms. Hajar الأسترالي. And we will keep the questions for both presentation after Ms. Hajar الأسترالي.
Good evening, everyone. I do have something written down here. I am going to look at this at a different tangent. And what I do believe the root of the problem is that there are not enough women in power to stand up for the rights of other women and to empower them through their success. Now, I'm sitting here today and listening to the ladies and gentlemen at the front, but the majority, the dominant are women, and hearing about all their success and all their achievements in their lifetime has given me more encouragement to proceed with my desire to be successful in life and to continue to raise my voice against what I believe is right and wrong, or for what I believe is right and against what I believe is wrong. And me, as a Muslim woman, born and raised here in Australia, in a devout Muslim family, with the ideology that I must accept everyone else for who they are and I must stay true to my beliefs. And I'm standing here today to share my views, not being hidden behind a wall and not being forced to stay at home. On the contrary, encouraged to speak my voice as a Muslim Australian Iraqi woman. Okay, so this is what I have prepared for today, and I've looked at this through the United Nations and what their expectations are of the world in Parliament. Women play a key role in counteracting violence and terrorism, promoting peace and harmony. However, there is never and nowhere near enough women who are given a voice to speak out or act upon issues arising in society today. In a day and age where gender equality and debates is a key topic in politics, the role of women is not surprisingly quite minimal. The United Nations Women's Facts and Figures declared that in 1995, 11.3% of all national parliamentarians, this is worldwide figures, were female. And although the figure has doubled in the last 20 years, as of January 2015, 22% of parliamentarians are female worldwide. And it is quite a slow increase, just 10% over 20 years. The rates vary from about 15% in the Pacific to around 41% in the Nordic countries. Just a few figures. In the USA, only 18.5% are female in parliaments, whereas in Australia, 29%. There are many issues which are passionate to women in the desire to advance the world in the modern times that we are in. Domestic violence, degradation of women, childcare, family welfare, education are just some of the issues that are of particular importance to women who are more likely to introduce such legislations in parliaments than men would. Men and women alike need to be educated that they are equal partners in everything in life. Women are just as capable as men to work in all fields, to lead in parliament and to fight in wars. Sadly though, many countries continue to operate with medieval traditions and view women as nothing more than the homemaker. The Arab and the Western world are both just as guilty of silencing women as the rest of the world. The United Nations Division of the Advancement of Women have recommended that countries worldwide need to implement effective gender quotas with the aim of achieving equitable representation of women candidates in elected positions. This needs to happen to empower them to make a change for the following generations, create stronger disciplinary laws against those who commit violence and atrocities against women, and allow them to be a part of a decision-making process that eminently affects both genders. Only then will our voices be made stronger and we will be able to counteract violence and terrorism more productively. Thank you.
كمل البرنامج. Our next guest speaker, born in Baghdad, graduated as a mechanical engineer from University of Baghdad and has arrived to Australia in 1993. She worked in the community development sector and health education. She worked as cultural consultant for a number of theatrical plays, such as Baghdad Wedding in Belvoir Theatre, 2009, and Scorched play in 2012. Participated as visual artist, you can see some of her work displayed here, in a number of exhibitions in New South Wales, such as Inside Out, The Torture Memo with Michael Callaghan, Maury Gallery, Lismore Gallery, Peacock Gallery, and North Ride Art Gallery. Currently, she works as a site manager with Australian Foundation for Disability and for Disability Employment Service. Please welcome Mrs. Layla Nash. And 8 minutes for Layla, and then we can ask the audience if they have a question for both speakers and also for you.
Thank you, Shadia, for the introduction. From something to 8 minutes. I'll check. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending tonight. Thank you to Muntada for inviting me to participate and giving me this opportunity. Empowered for life after violence. We all are aware that the topic of tonight's function is women against violence and extremism. The main part that I'll be covering in my presentation is about domestic violence. While this regularly happens in Iraq as well as Australia and all over the world, most importantly, the aspects that I will cover in my presentation are also associated with violence against women by extremism in Iraq, which was covered earlier by presentation from Sanam and Taqdum. My presentation outline would be introduction to domestic violence, background types, symptoms and effect, domestic violence and employment, services available. I might skip case study as I have Lena from START, my colleague, to present. There will be a take-home message, and if Shadi will approve, I'll have a khulasa in Arabic later on. Yeah. The definition of domestic violence is violent or aggressive behavior within the home, typically involving violent abuse of spouse or partner. It's a pattern of abusive behavior through which a person seeks to control or intimidate other person. It starts usually with physical abuse and strengthened by economical, emotional isolation and threats. Usually leaves the woman feeling like very low self-esteem, with lower self-esteem and trapped in dependent, violent relationship, abusive relationship. It also has a harmful effect on the family, and I'll cover that at a later slide. As Dr. Mail Omar went into details about the type of domestic violence, so I'll just confirm that we have the 6 types. However, the major type of the abuse is sexual abuse. So with sexual abuse, rape is very clear category of sexual abuse. This is where there is a major link with what's happening in Iraq by ISIS now, through the sexual enslavement to the Iraqi woman. So that's what we looked at with the previous presentations. How will women feel when they are in a violent relationship? They feel worthless and lack of self-confidence. They are ashamed and afraid of letting other people know the abusive relationship they are living. They feel that they might be blamed for the violence. They feel sad, hopeless. They are still terrified. If they do something about it, what would the partner do? They would think that no one would believe in them, or they'll be scared of coping on their own, and confused, depressed, and lonely. Why can't women leave? The shame, humiliation, isolation associated with admitting that they are in a relationship, believing that the situation will get better and the family will stick together, their financial dependency on their partners, their lack of awareness of services available to them, believing violence is their own fault, maybe. So lack of awareness of supporting services, threat of suicide from their partner, for example, or further violence towards them or the children. Could be a religious commitment towards the partner, fear of losing the children, fear of the legal system and the police, the low self-esteem and the low confidence. Domestic violence and employment. Majority of survivors of domestic violence are trapped in their situation. Their major fear is their financial security. So they could be not only a victim of violence, but they are a victim of their comfort. It's them who will need to do the hard work, and it's us who will need to empower them. Building occupational skills can improve self-esteem and self-confidence. Getting a new job is getting a new life where they can be financially independent and become independent with the children as a family, without a partner. We also, and this is where Celine Dion said on her songs, she said, let's say no to violence, I believe, for our lives and for our children. Domestic violence can also have a cascading effect on the children. Children living in domestic violence relationships, they have low self-esteem, they have health problems mentally and physically, and eventually they'll have very low employment rate, vocational goals, And but this is what we call the generational unemployment, the extending of unemployment through multiple generations within the same family. This will bring me to employment and what we do at Afford Employment. We follow the holistic service delivery model approach. We believe that there is no one is unemployable. Everyone's employable as long as we support them and we know what's concerned. So we look at the 5 aspects of the whole thing after the assessment, after seeing them, after them getting referred. We look at the gaps in their skills. We make sure that we upskill them for the jobs, for the goals, for the vocational goals that they need to achieve. We also look at the family and the work relationship. Family, in particular, with the family, people living with domestic violence, we try to have them meeting with in-house counseling, gaining their trust, and then refer them to services like STARS, and Dina will be covering that part of it. As we noted, financial security is one of the main barriers for people living for ladies living in domestic violence. So what we do, our employment consultant will train them on house budget, on paying bills, on managing their credits and debts, and also understanding their Centrelink entitlements. We also look at their health, physical and mental. We're in ongoing contact with their medical practitioner, psychologist, social worker. Make sure that they are stabilized in their barriers and manage their conditions of illness. Help them overcome feelings of disempowerment and victimization. We also avoid, as we see, there's a social isolation. We also avoid social isolation. So we refer them to social and sporting programs. These social and sporting programs and community engagements will promote involvement and contribution back to the community. So there will be a feel of self-worth. Services, as I mentioned earlier, our referrals to services would include, but not limited to, the following services: domestic violence line, SWAT, migrant resource centers all over the place, immigrant women speak out, immigrant women health services, women's mental health centers, partners in recovery, legal aid, and surely there will be other with the legal Southwest Sydney Legal. And we have Fadia to present about the legal issues and family laws when it comes to domestic violence. How are we going with time, Shadia? Okay.
Very good girl.
How many minutes I have left?
1.
Okay. My main message today would be for people living in domestic violence. The take-home message is that you should turn your fear into strength. You should take control of your life, your family, and other well-being and future. You have to overcome your low self-esteem to be empowered to leave this abusive relationship. And employment is a very powerful tool to achieve that. In Arabic, should I do the Arabic side? Yeah? I have some brochures too. For example, هل تريدين عندي مع خدمات أخرى موجودة هنا. هل تريدين البقاء بمنزلك من العنف؟ الخلاصة: العنف الأسري هو أن يقوم أي فرد من أفراد الأسرة، الزوج أو الأولاد، بأي سلوك يسبب لك الأذى، وقد يشمل مثل ما ذكرنا بالإنجليزي 6 الأشكال: أشكال العنف الجسدي مثل الصفع أو اللكم، الإجبار على القيام بأفعال غير مرغوبة، إلقاء التهديدات والنعت بأسماء غير لائقة، الحرمان من الحصول على المال أو العمل أو الدراسة، أو حتى ممكن يكون النوم أو الاتصال بالأشخاص، من الاتصال بالأهل، حتى ممكن يكون part of the domestic violence يكون إنه تكونين ممنوعة من الذهاب إلى أماكن العبادة، أو ممنوعة إنه limited internet use، أو checking نسوي شيء على الموبايل أو بقية الأشياء أو البنك أكاونت. المرأة تحس إنه ما عندها قيمة، ما عندها ثقة بالنفس، تخاف، تخجل من إنه الناس يعرفون اللي صاير، يصير عندها كآبة وتوحد، ممكن تخاف عما يمكن أن يفعله الشريك إذا طلبت المساعدة من أحد. لماذا لم تهرب المرأة؟ لأن الشعور بالحرج والعار والتحقير والأسرة المتزامنة مع الاعتراف بالعنف المنزلي، قلة الوعي بالخدمات المتاحة وضعف الإمكانات المالية. ممكن أيضا تخاف إنه يهددها، راح أقول للبوليس مثلا، راح أقول للسنتر لينك أو الويلفير أورجنايزيشن أو ياخذون الأطفال منها، هاي كلها تهديدات. خوف من الشرطة والقانون، من فقدان الأولاد إلى الشريك. أكثر شيء إحنا نساعد المرأة إنه تقوى شخصيتها financially هو الميجر ثينج، فنحاول ندعمها من خلال التوظيف. شكرا.
شكرا لك. We continue with the Starts Lida issue. Lina? Yeah. Lina, it seems you are called to say a few words. If you're not in the program, doesn't matter. You have better attention this one.
مرحبا. مثل ما قالت الأخت شادية, my name is Lina Ishu. I'm the Senior Youth Project Officer at STARTS. Been working there for about 7 years. Started as a young woman project officer, now as a senior, so maybe working more generally with the community. Now today I'm going to talk about a couple of things. To start with is what is STARTS and what we provide, so people who doesn't know us. So STARTS stands for Services for the Treatment and Rehabilitation of Torture and Trauma Survivors. Basically, we work with refugees who come newly to New South Wales and who settles in New South Wales, and who are refugees. Who are refugees or refugee alike, which means alike if they are children of people who've been refugee to Australia, or who experienced a similar situation, but they were not refugees, but they're settling here in Australia. Services that we provide is basically we provide counselling, therapy, and we provide community development project as well, processes. Now with counselling, we do provide different modalities, and when we say it, like we've got Hassan here, who's one of our bilingual counsellors, and we've got Jasmina, she's the coordinator of community services at STARTS as well here. We've got Yasmin. Hi Yasmin. She looks after our cars. I think that is the most important position. Sorry, Jasmina. Now, within the team that I work with, we work directly with the community, and what we believe at STARTS is counselling is not enough to work with migrant communities. We believe that community services, community development work goes side by side with counselling. And basically, community development is kind of like a process, not a project, where we never stop. We always go, step by step, and we step not only one step, and 2 and 3 until we reach the aim of the community. So basically, we take it right from the beginning to the end. And I think we've run a few consultations with the communities, like the Mandarin consultation. Lately we had a Caribbean consultation, and there will be some other planned consultation with the community. This is how the community starts to build up in Australia. And all this, why we do it, I just want to link it to something that all the ladies previously spoke about, and some questions from the audience as well. What we're talking about when we're talking about violence and terrorism, and specifically violence, I just want to bring it back to state terrorism. And this is a very important topic because state terrorism affects everyone in the community, not just the person. It's fragment the whole community, the family. And if you all remember, during Saddam's regime's time, he basically practiced that. And what he did is he terrorized the whole unit of the family, and then the community and the wider community in the Iraq as well. If one person does something wrong, according to his rules, the whole family or the tribe all the village will be destroyed. Okay, so that is what we mean about state tourism. And the way that we deal with issues at STARS is basically we cover, we believe in something we call it at STARS, a Bible for STARS, which is Judith Herman's book about healing of trauma. Okay, so what she said is, I think Jasmina mentioned something previously in her note is, if you wanted to empower any refugee, and specifically women, you need to build trust, safety, and support. And this is what we do. It's a triangle, and it starts from the base, which we need to have that base of trust with our clients and with the community. And this goes right from the home, because you're raising kids and you're raising girls. You need to trust them. Without the trust, you cannot build a society. And then you need to support them in that. You need to provide that safety network for them. And then support them in terms of linking them to other services, as Leila said here previously. She showed you a list of services. So I'm going to tell you a really little story about how START support young girls. When I first started at START, it was my first camp. We run a lot of camps with young people. It was a young women's camp, and I was called by a caseworker from Migrant Resource Center telling me, Lina, I've got a little girl, okay, she's from Iraq. She is very traumatized and I don't know what to do with her. I said, refer her to START. We did. After a few months, camp happened. Counselor called me, she said, Lina, can we refer this girl to your camp? I said, okay. But I wanted to refer her, but she is refusing to go. I said, why? She said, she's just refusing to go. I said, let me meet with her. We organized a meeting. We met me, her counselor, and the caseworker. It appeared that the girl was actually raped in Iraq. Her father and uncle were captured, killed, and she was raped at the same time. And they throw the body of the parents in front of the father and uncle in front of the house, and then they delivered her back home. When she came here, she got 5 brothers and a mother with her. Brothers are so protective that they look like an abusers because they don't let her do anything. For 2 years being in Australia, the only place she goes to was TAFE, which she only went for 2 months or so, or shops with her mom, and that's it. And the rest of the time, she stays home. I said to her, well, we have to do something. She said, I cannot go. You have to convince my brothers. I said, what about if we convince your mom? She said, my mom can't do anything. We organized a meeting with the mother. We explained to her the process, what is happening with her girl, why her girl is not happy. She said to me, in 2 years, I have not smiled. I'm not talking about laughing or being happy. I have not smiled. She really touched my heart. And I said to our counselor and the caseworker, even by force, I will take her to the camp. Even if I abduct her, I'll take her to the camp. I don't care what's going to happen. We convinced the mother convinced one of the brothers, then the mother and the brother had a conspiracy theory. They will not tell the other brothers where the girl is. She calls me, she goes, Lina, I don't have clothes for camp. What shall I bring? I said, whatever you've got in your wardrobe. And she believed me. She said, she called after 2 days, she said, I've got my suitcase. I said, what's in it? Okay, she said, everything in my wardrobe. Okay, I said, okay, drop it down. I'll send you the list with the counselor. This is what you bring. Now, we went to the camp. At the camp, we had really good program in terms of, we talked about what is trauma, how we can cope with it, what we can do. We talked about feeling emotions, where we feel them, how we feel them. We did sport. Okay, they spent all night, girls in the rooms talking. And at one of the nights, they called me in one of the rooms. They said, Miss, do you want to come and join us? I said, so what do you do? And I was the only Arabic speaker at the camp. They said to me, we talk about our problems. I said, so what did you learn? Each girl said to me, I learned that my problem is less than this girl's problem. Even the girl herself, she said, my problem is less than that girl's problem. I kept it to that point. We continued the camp. Again, the activities, involved a lot of, emotional stuff. Plus, we did at the end a party and a drama and everything about everything that they were done in Iraq, their lives. We come back. She called me after a week. She said, Lina, I want to go back to study. I've got 1 minute. Okay, I said, fine, study. We involved her at senior college. She said to me, I said to her, I remember, I said to her, so what do you want to do if you got the opportunity? She said, I always dreamed to be an air hostess. Okay? She was a really beautiful girl. This has happened. I met her once again after a few months. She was alright. She was speaking English, going to school. She was fantastic. 3 years in a row, I met her in a market in Liverpool. I did not recognize her. She said to me, she called me and I was like, who's this calling me miss in the middle of the shopping center? I looked around, a beautiful lady approaching me with a big smile. She said, can't you remember me? I said, no, remind me. She said to me, I'm such and such. She said to me, you know what? With help of stars and the MRC and the camp that I will never ever forget, I am now a hostess in Emirates Airlines. I started crying, okay, because I did not think that I knew she can do something for herself, but I was not really sure that she can go all that step ahead. Now I become very emotional. I just want to close it into three points. Sorry?
That's what I just said. That Lina's going to cry.
Okay, that is my weakness actually. I become very emotional. 3 things I learned from this. It was not just education, but it was learning. What she learned, this girl. Okay, she learned about herself and her environment, and then she went and educated herself. All parents here, we need to do that at home. She went and looked for employment because this is how she flourished. Okay, and if we go back to education, there is a say where it says, "You teach a woman, you teach a whole nation." Yeah. So this is what we try to do with the women. And the other thing I would say always is employment. Do not push them. Do not push the girls to do the lowest of these employments. Okay. Always push them to do the highest and achieve the highest level of it. Every time I meet women from Iraq, girls from Iraq, what you wanted to do? Hairdressing. I don't know how many hairdressers will open in Liverpool like for God's sake. Maybe it's good, maybe they'll go cheaper. Yeah, for us, okay, but 90% of them they will say that. So get us to help them to get the best employment with the highest pay, okay, to achieve highest potential for themselves. I think they are begging me now. Good that you can control me not talking a lot. So
it's now domestic violence on you.
well, you have all the right. Anyway, thank you very much, and I'm sorry that I've become a bit
Law and commerce, majoring in accounting and finance. She completed the graduate diploma in legal practice through the College of Law. She was admitted as a solicitor of the Supreme Court of New South Wales and the High Court of Australia in 2009. Currently, she specializes in family law and is employed by one of Australia's leading family law firms. So we're not campaigning for it, I think. She has gained invaluable experience in undertaking work across the broad spectrum of family law matters, including property settlement, parenting, child support, spouse maintenance, and binding financial agreement in relation to breakdown of marriage and de facto relationship. Her particular expertise lies in conducting complex property and parenting matters. Here you are. Please welcome our last but not least speaker for this evening in the forum, Fadia Ali. And I want to know that all the questions for the three speakers together in one package will be after Fadia's Ali presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you, Fadia.
Nساء, good evening everyone. Thank you very much, Shadia, for the introduction, and I have my stopwatch ready to go so I don't get myself into trouble. As Shadia pointed out, my presentation will be focused on domestic violence, and given my legal background, I'll be focusing on, so further to Leila's presentation, I'll be focusing on the legal aspects of domestic violence. I thought I would start off with some statistics both from Australia and across the world as they relate to domestic violence. Locally, the most common reference to statistics in Australia to domestic violence stems from the number of intimate partner homicides, and that is the number of people that are killed across Australia in intimate relationships. That statistic was widely referred to as being 1 woman per week, and one every 10 days for men. However, as I'll point out later on, that's become a somewhat historical statistic, and the statistics have become worse since then. The 2005 Australian Bureau of Statistics Personal Safety Survey concluded that just under 500,000 Australian women reported that they had experienced physical or sexual violence or sexual assault in the past 12 months. So that's a statistic of 500,000 women in 1 year. The other statistic was that more than 1 million women had experienced physical or sexual assault by their male current or former partner since the age of 15. There might be a double counting there in the statistics, in that some women may have been counted in both the physical and sexual assault statistic. 37.8% of women who experienced physical assault in the 12 months before the survey said the perpetrator was a current or previous male partner, and 34.4% said the perpetrator was a male family member or friend. Most incidents of physical assault against women in the 12 months prior to 2005 were committed in the home, and that was a statistic of 64.1%. The most recent statistic, and that is as at February 2015, is that there were 13 Australian women who were reportedly killed as a result of a domestic violence incident in the first 7 weeks of 2015, which equates to almost 2 women per week. So as we can see, the statistic has almost doubled. There's also a reported trend of statistics suggesting that on current trends, the 1 woman per week statistic is now outdated. Now, in terms of my area of expertise, which is family law, in terms of the number of cases that come before the family court each year, in 2003, the family court reported that almost 75% of judicially determined cases, that is the cases that start and go all the way to a final determination before a judge, involved cases of allegations of family violence. So that's the Australian statistic. Comparing it with the rest of the world, in 2005, the World Health Organization released a report into domestic violence against women. The report used data collected from Samoa, Peru, Brazil, Namibia, Serbia and Montenegro, Ethiopia, Japan, Thailand, Bangladesh, the United Republic of Tanzania and New Zealand. The World Health Organization reported that for physical violence against women by intimate partners, the lowest rate across the world was in Japan, which was 13%, and the highest rate was 61% in Peru. For sexual violence against women by intimate partners, the lowest rate was 6% in Japan, and the highest rate was 59% in Ethiopia. So I think we can see a correlation there between the factors that contribute to the rate of physical and sexual violence. And most countries across the world range somewhere between 10 to 15%. The amount of women who had experienced severe violence, which defined violence, which is very likely to cause physical injuries, including being hit with a fist, kicked, dragged, threatened with a weapon, or actual violence with a weapon, ranged between 4% in Japan and 49% in Peru, with most countries falling somewhere between 13 and 25%. Okay, I'll skip now to the law as it applies in Australia. In Australia, a person who is subjected to domestic violence has the ability to obtain a personal protection order in accordance with the relevant legislation enacted in each state, so it varies from state to state. In New South Wales, the relevant act is the Crimes, Domestic and Personal Violence Act of 2007. Domestic violence, according to the New South Wales law, is defined as a personal violence offence committed by a person against another person with whom the person who commits the offence has had a domestic relationship. And that can be a person that is married to another person, is in a de facto relationship with another person, has an intimate personal relationship, and so forth. In addition to the ability of a person to seek personal protection orders in accordance with the Crimes, Domestic and Personal Violence Act, it's also possible for a person to seek an injunction for the purposes of their personal protection for married parties in accordance with the Family Law Act of 1975, which is not a state act, it's a Commonwealth Act that applies Australia-wide. Similar legislation exists for de facto relationships in each state and territory. The consequences of domestic and family violence in family law matters, I'll touch on that a little bit. Insofar as they apply to parenting matters, the primary consideration in determination of parenting matters is always the best interests of the child. In determining what is in the child's best interest, the court is to have regard to what's known as two primary considerations, as well as a number of additional considerations. Prior to the enactment of the Family Law Legislation Amendment, Family Violence and Other Measures Act in 2011, the two primary considerations that are referred to were to be weighed equally. So they were to be given equal weight when assessing the best interests of the child. Those considerations were, the first being the benefit of the child to have a meaningful relationship with each parent, and the second is the need to protect the child from physical or psychological harm, from being subjected to or exposed to abuse, neglect or family violence. So prior to the 2011 amendments, they were to be weighed equally. Then the 2011 amendments came in and the law changed such that that second consideration, which is the need to protect the child from abuse, neglect and so forth, is to have greater weight than the child's right to have a meaningful relationship with both parents. So in terms of, given the time constraints, I'll touch on parenting more so than property. In recent cases, there was a 2013 family law case that was decided in the Family Court of Australia, where the basic facts were as follows. There was a long history of severe domestic and family violence during and following separation. The mother filed an application seeking that the child have no time with the father, and that the father not come within a 10-kilometre radius of the town in which she lived with the children. And so a raft of other constraints, including not coming within 100 metres of herself, her partner, the children, or the maternal grandparents. We'll know from practice that it's common for an independent children's lawyer to be appointed in cases such as that. So an independent children's lawyer was appointed who can either support the application of either parent or come up with their own recommendation. In this instance, the independent children's lawyer supported the mother's recommendation but sought that the restriction of the father coming close to the children be expanded from 10 kilometres to 15 kilometres of the town. And that was obviously because the recommendation was based on the children's best interests. The order that the family court made in that instance, so we can see the change from the right of each parent having a meaningful relationship with their child, the judge in that family court case decided that the mother have sole parental responsibility, that the children live with the mother, that the children had no time whatsoever with the father or communication with them, and imposed an injunction that the father is not to come within 15 kilometres of the town in which the mother and the children lived, or to come within 100 metres of her, the children, or the mother's partner. So we can see how then there was a tendency of law reform to afford the protection of the children a greater weight than the meaningful relationship. Strategies to combat. Given we've seen from the statistics that domestic violence is clearly a huge problem in Australia and worldwide, and I guess the significant observation in all of that is that the majority of incidents of violence occur within an intimate relationship or a family relationship, which is the disturbing factor. Insofar as they apply to family law, Professor Richard Chisholm said that the family law system and each component in it needs to encourage and facilitate the disclosure of family violence to ensure that it is understood and act effectively upon that understanding. So I think the issue with the statistics is that they're not accurate to the extent that there's a huge number of domestic violence incidents which are not reported for reasons that were already outlined by the previous speakers. A fear of the repercussions of reporting, a lack of understanding, a lack of the options that are available to victims and so forth, and a simple lack of education. So I think in terms of law reform, should domestic violence be a criminal offence in the Crimes Act, as was the case in some other countries over the world where they've imposed tougher punishments on domestic violence offences and so forth. And I think education is the key factor. That's in terms of whether you're looking at the perpetrators or the victims, education is really the key. A lack of awareness and understanding of domestic violence, as Shadia mentioned previously, the lack of coverage, I think, in the media, the lack of understanding in the community of the statistics that I outlined is alarming, and I think is contributing to the growth of that statistic, which is alarming. So I think increased awareness, education, greater reporting and so forth, and a greater understanding within the community, and that reassurance to victims that there are mechanisms to help them, I think is the way to combat that issue. Improved research on the statistics and education for legal practitioners, the judiciary in dealing with domestic violence, the community at large, victims and perpetrators. I think I'll end it there.
Thank you. Thank you. We should have many lawyers speaking. I think they go by the time. Now, as you heard, all the speakers today, Sanaa Al-Ahmar, Professor Ma'an Al-Umar, Ilham Dawood, Layla Naji, Lina Ishu, and Hajar Al-Salami, and finally Fadi Ali, والفنانين يلي اشتركوا معنا, all the visual artists who are present with us today. We have so many work to do, and just to answer the question that being raised at the beginning of this forum. So, and also in the audience, who knows, we have so many unknown, incognito talents between us, so I can contribute today to write a paper about how to fight domestic violence in Australia. So let's see how much we have contributed in Australia to stop domestic violence, which is considered by Australian law a crime. Let's speak from where we are now on the map. We are in Australia, in Sydney today, in the mountains, in Mount Richard. How much we can do from here? We won't let you go out today unless you sign a petition that you will be all working against domestic violence from your own position. And that's it to answer the question of the journalist who asked me the question at the beginning, Sabah Abdul Rahman. Thank you for addressing this question. So we have a journalist, we have IT technology, we have lawyers, solicitor, case manager, and project manager, and so on. And so we have also editor-in-chief of newspaper and magazines. When اختفى وديع شامخ? Here you are. Wadea, you have a responsibility on your shoulders because you are editor-in-chief of Al-Nujum magazine, which is basically, ultimately, a women's magazine. So let's see, let having Haifa Wehbi on the cover. Next time we will have Stop Domestic Violence on the cover. So I think you will sell more copies than Haifa Wehbi on the cover. So let's see how much we can do. I don't think she's exposed to domestic violence. Yes. She's Muslim. Okay, any questions from the floor? Yes. Excuse me. تفضل.